All right. Hey, Wayne. Hey, I know it's laundry day, but we got a show to do.
All right.
All right. Well,
Bienvenue, everybody.
bienvenue, everybody.
This is Wayne.
This
Of
is
course,
Wayne, and
it's
of course,
Monday.
it's Monday. And today we're going to do the show on red beans and rice. And if you are from New Orleans or from Louisiana, you probably already know the story about red beans and rice. But before we get started, I'm going to introduce my lovely wife, Dawn Nix, and Dawn will take it from there.
All right. Hey, y'all. My name is Dawn. My name is Dawn Nix. I'm married to Wayne. My job today is running the cameras, getting anything that Wayne needs. I chopped all the vegetables. I made the dessert. So we all chip in a little, help out. And speaking of helping out, our next co-host is Lance Fields.
Hey everybody, I get to sit back, watch the fun, engage. I still haven't gotten to cook, but don't worry, my turn will be coming soon. For now, we're going to show you and tell you about red beans and rice, Louisiana style.
All right. Anybody in the audience right now wants a shout out?
So far, we have Kim Boltman. We have Cheryl Deuce, who is apparently got the chance to go home early today, which means that she's now driving, but she's going to try to get home hopefully safely and not too much, because y'all know you can watch an HOA after the fact on YouTube, right? Great. Okay, so Cheryl, Kim is here. We have Tony Green, 113 Kitty Jury. And I believe there's a special connection to Kitty Drury, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that right, Wayne Nix?
Yeah, there's a little one there. We'll have to talk about that in a little bit.
All right. And Aslan Bloor, Nourish Boutique up in upstate New York, tuning in to learn how red beans and rice make a difference in the Mondays in New Orleans and southeast Louisiana. Wait a second. Is red beans and rice a Louisiana thing, or is it southeast Louisiana specifically? Do we know that?
I think it's Louisiana.
Yeah,
just like everything else, everything's spread.
Yeah, I thought so too. I imagine it goes over to Mobile and Bay St. Louis,
Texas, Mississippi,
Pascagoula, all in there. Julie Caraccio, Tim Longwell, my goodness, Tammy Cook, Phil Aston. I will continue to go through the list while you start talking, and we'll highlight some other folks in a bit.
Okay, well, red beans and rice is not really a difficult dish to begin with, and I was trying to think, when was the last time I had red beans and rice that I actually prepared it? And the last time I had it was probably around December or so, and I took Dawn rabbit hunting, and we went down to goddamn bayou. Remember I was telling you about that bayou that I go fishing in? Well, we went back down that way, and we were chasing some rabbits, and we were climbing through the briars and all this stuff, and we come across this big old hole. Right? And it's real big, so I threw a stick in there to see if I can, how deep it was. I didn't hear anything. So Dawn came over, she tripped over this big old log that I called her. She threw a big stick in there, and we still couldn't hear it. So she'd been working out a little bit, so I said, look, babe, let's grab this log over here, and we're going to bend over, we're going to pick it and throw it and see when we can hear it. So we picked this log up, heave it into the hole, right? And all of a sudden, this goat just comes by, boom, man, just drops right into the hole, right? Some crazy goat. That was crazy, right? We couldn't even hear it land. So we figured we had enough for the day, started walking back, and ran into former Boudreaux. And he asked how the rabbit hunting was going, and I said, well, I think most of those rabbits are sleeping, because sometimes they do that. But the ones we did see, we think they might, may have fell down some little hole, but they sure do have some crazy goats out here. He's like, well, I'm looking for my goat. I said, well, we just saw this crazy goat that went by. I said, well, it can't be my crazy goat because I got my goat tied up to this log over here. All right.
Oh, yeah,
so we're going to go ahead. I'm turn on this stove. You see, I got a little special rig for y'all, right?
What do you got there?
Well, I grabbed the stove that somebody was giving away, and I kind of rigged it with some camper cables, and we're over here cooking live now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off so I can see. But basically, I have some bacon grease, and I threw some bacon grease into this little pan right here. It should be warming up. As soon as I get it hot, it's a very simple dish to make red beans and rice. All you have to do, and typically the red beans and rice, let me just take one step back. the red beans and rice was typically cooked on Mondays because it's wash day. But also they usually cooked a big dinner on Sunday and usually have like a leftover ham or something like that. So you'd cook red beans and rice and you would throw the ham in there, and it's something that you can let simmer all day, and you just stir the pot every now and then. And what we're going to do is we're going to saute some sausage, which I think somebody asked in the crowd if we were going to use sausage, and we did. So we peeled the casing off of sausage, I chopped it up. I'm going to brown that meat first, and then I'm going to add in my Trinity, which is also called a Creole Mariquois, which is basically bell pepper, green onions, and some celery. I'm going to let that simmer for probably about 4 minutes just to kind of get soft. But on the other pot, I'm going to go ahead and take my pre-soaked beans that we already sorted and washed twice, and I'm going to get the chicken stock that I have boiling with them, and we'll take it from there. So I'm going to do all this while you talk, on.
Well, real quick, well, while we're doing that, with a lot of people tuning in from all over the U.S., of course, and then around the world, guys watching the show, if you would, just put in a comment the town and country that you're viewing from, if you haven't already. I know Tony Green's watching from Tampa, and I happen to know that Debbie Davis is in the Denver area. And I mentioned that Jessica is up in New York. Julie, I think, is in Raleigh. But anyway, if y'all would just put that in there, just because I'm curious, I want to kind of map something out and see where people are. And have you heard of red beans and rice before? And if you have you ever tried it? And yeah, that's kind of where we are with that. Oh, Nazim popped in. Get ready, people. It's gonna get crazy. The mad Miami Italian has popped into the scene. And then I'm going to go back up real quick to the ham, the original style of red beans and rice with ham. So typical ham dinner on a Sunday, kind of a big deal. Save the ham hock. And traditionally, the most traditional version of red beans and rice would be simply the basic, the Trinity, a little bit of fat, the beans, and then the ham hock. That would be the most basic traditional style red beans and rice. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, there's different variations that you can do for that, but that is the traditional one. You're correct.
And so from that, as ingredients became more readily available, people started experimenting, as we do in Louisiana with our cooking, adding different ingredients, and as different things show up, start making it. So again, back to red beans and rice on Mondays. Did we talk about that? Feels like we didn't.
Well, we just touched on it a little bit.
Okay. Because I noticed you mentioned laundry at the beginning of the show. I'm wondering if it doesn't have something to do with laundry.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Dawn.
And you had put a picture of a washboard up. I think that was stirring up some comments before the show too. We put up pictures of washboards. We don't have a washboard, but the purpose was that's how the women clean their clothes, in the old days, and that's what kind of got us hinting at what's going to happen on Monday with the red beans.
Right. Typically they would put these, like I said, the beans on, and it's something that you can put on low and let simmer all day. So, and that's really the whole point, is that this meal is supposed to be something very low maintenance. As soon as you get it prepped, you just let it simmer and you keep stirring the pot every now and then. So now, if you want to know some ways that you can jazz this stuff up, we can talk about that too. There's other variations, like if I was to be making this, like if my mother-in-law comes over, we'd probably be getting some tasso, maybe some pickled pork, right, and chopping up these fancier meats and letting those sear as well. And it's just something that's going to give it a little more variety, a little more flavor. Of course, I'm going to add some garlic and some bay leaf as we go along. But the dish is really simple. A lot of our dishes, you always hear the thing, you always start with the roux. But we also always start with the Trinity, and we always start with searing things off. It's the same premise. The whole reason why is because all these dishes, the main point is they don't just originate from Creole and Cajun either. And that's one of the things that we went to meet with you in New Orleans about, Lance, is we wanted to talk about how we can make the knowledge of our cultures go even further, because like this dish in itself probably came from the Caribbean islands, which before that probably came from Peru. So those are the things that we want to start hitting on. Finally, here my sauce is starting to sear. Let me get that.
So yeah, while you're giving that a stir, something that occurred to me today that I hadn't really considered is you will hear people say that visit Louisiana and they'll try a dish and they'll say, "Oh, gumbo was my favorite, jambalaya was my favorite, muffaletta was my favorite," whatever it is. And I started thinking about what it is that causes people to connect with a particular dish, or all of them, in when they come to visit Louisiana and eat their way through all the restaurant choices that we have. Is that the seasonings come from around the world. These are not unknown seasonings and flavor profiles to people. And I'm wondering, as I was thinking about it, I wondered if people aren't recognizing a flavor profile or spice or an ingredient that's familiar to them, which causes them to connect more with a particular dish. Again, not looking for necessarily an answer on that, but just kind of what y'all thought about that idea.
Well, I actually think that's when this whole concept came to my mind. Earlier, several weeks ago when I was researching all this, and somebody said, well, they started asking about Louisiana food and the culture and how we were landlocked and these sorts of things. But even so, you still had that major port in New Orleans, and you still had access to all these different types of ingredients. However, with the different wars and embargoes and trade and that sort of thing, you did start to have substitutes, like when we were talking about, the saffron was traded out with tomatoes when we were making the dish 2 shows ago, not the etouffee, the paella is what they were calling it, right? And like I said, it's the same premise. We just kind of substitute what we have.
And speaking of substitutions, Julie Caraccio and Jessica Maynard want to know, what would you need to do differently for red beans and rice to make it a meatless dish?
Well, with red beans and rice, you don't even need the sausage. You can make a vegetarian red beans and rice. In fact, I think that's one of the standard ways to do it. But when you add in the meats, again, the meats were thrown in just because of it's usually left over from the Monday before. I'm throwing it in because I like meat. So would you want to add more spices? You can keep the spice level the same. Is there anything else that you could add extra that would sort of buffer the fact that there's no meat in it to keep the flavor profile as intense as what we're used to? Right. So the meat does give it some flavors. But one thing that I want to point out here is that you don't want to start throwing like seasonings into your red beans and rice until the later part of the boil. And what I mean by that specifically, Lance, is like don't go grab the Tonys or Zatarans or whatever and start seasoning it up right from the get-go. Those beans need to cook. And if you throw that salt in there, it's going to wind up making that bean hard, and it's going to be harder to cook. So that might be a little tip.
Yeah, so let's repeat that tip. And that goes for any type of bean that you are bringing back from a dry state. Don't salt it until the beans are cooked or a chemical reaction occurs that does not allow the beans to cook thoroughly. In fact, they get even harder. So no salt until your beans are cooked.
Now, I have some beans here that we soaked last night, and I took a picture this morning and posted. I did drain these beans, and you can see they're kind of split. And you don't even have to drain them or soak them before you want to cook, but it helps to speed up the process. So, but we also soaked the water and we stuck it in the ice box. And I specifically took a picture of the beans soaking in the ice box because I wanted to point that out. If you leave them sorting on the counter, right, soaking on the counter, you're going to have them ferment, and you're going to start to get a lot more gas. And if you want musical fury, go ahead, and it'll be a good show. But this will help keep the entourage down a little bit.
Remember that? Did you all sing that song when you were kids? Beans, beans, a magical fruit.
Nope.
I don't know the rest of it, Lance. Go ahead.
Can we tell you? Beans, beans, the magical fruit. The more you eat, the more you toot. There was a little bit more to it, but I can't remember it. But anyway, yeah, when we were little kids, we used to say that because, of course, it's supposed to. The appropriate response is to be embarrassed if you break wind in public, and of course, beans. Particularly if they're left out overnight or not in a cool environment to soak, all that bubble and all of that you see on top that you're skimming off, that adds to their power. So put them in the fridge if you're going to soak them overnight. Now, Wayne, if you don't soak your beans overnight and you just put them in the pot and start cooking them, how long do you want to let them boil before you reduce the heat?
I mean, I think it just adds like another hour to 2 hours on the boil time.
Yeah, for me personally, when
I've
I
never-
do it, if I start from just dried beans and drop them into a pot on the stove, a minimum of a full roll boil for an hour is what is
Right.
kind of my standard thing. Again, it depends on the beans. I can tell after an hour if I can turn the heat down or if they need to go for another half an hour or so. It just kind of depends. Humidity plays into it. The beans
How do you tell?
themselves.
Because the bean starts to split, right?
Yep.
Yep. So
And
this little stove rig that I have is not putting out as much power as I initially thought it would, but we're still going to get there. Now, this dish usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes to get prepped once you've pre-soaked the beans and that sort of thing, and then you just set it on the stove for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So this is not going to be completed by the end of our little show, but we will post, later on when it's done of us eating it, probably.
And let me see.
so
Hang on.
in oh, I'm sorry, Don. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to remind Wayne it's been 15 minutes, and so far we've been prepping. Let's see. And I want to say thanks for watching 15 minutes, and let's go and make some red beans.
Any comments in the crowd? Any comments in the crowd right now?
Well, everyone did so far that I can see is checked in. Let's see, we got Heart of Cajun Country right here in Southeast Louisiana, says James Casey. I just wanted to watch y'all's show because I'd never heard of it till recently. Thanks, James Casey. Hope you're enjoying yourself.
Thanks.
Debbie Davis.
This is all live, so.
Yeah. Debbie Davis did an Eat to Win diet about 30 years ago, and she said that red beans and rice were a staple for that, which makes perfect sense because you get your complex carbohydrates and you get the protein from the beans, easy to digest. We did the meatless part. Let's see what else we got. Oh, forgot to ask. Do you use and this is from Kim Boltman, do you use andouille sausage or just regular old smoked sausage?
You can use whatever you like. But typically I like to buy andouille sausage. This time we bought, I think it's a mixture of pork mild because that's what Dawn wanted, so that's what we bought. So we're going to go with that. And how we did the beans, now the beans came from Camellia in New Orleans, and it came in a pound. And that pound we basically soaked the beans by covering it with cold water about 2 inches over the beans. Let that soak typically 4 hours, but I like to let them soak overnight. Makes it a little easier. So I let them soak like that. After we drain them, we're going to throw them in this pot here, which I'm about to do now when it starts boiling again. And then typically you want, like I said, you want that to sit for at least 2 to 3 hours. Once you start to see the beans start to split, and you can mash them on the side of the bowl with, and they break down pretty easy, then you know you're onto something good.
Yep, creamy red beans is an absolute must because you hear people all the time, they go to get red beans and rice and they say, oh, those were the creamiest red beans, because you do want the beans to break down, not completely, but a certain amount of them, which then that starch gets mixed into the pot and it makes them creamy. There's no cream in red beans and rice. It's just the consistency issue. That's actually what you want. It's not that's what you're shooting for.
Right. All right. So I threw my beans in there with the Trinity mix, and this is going to be about 6 cups of water, or it's almost half and half because I put chicken stock because I think it gives it a lot more flavor. And we're going to let that roll to a boil, and then now we can just chill.
And so then again, back to the meatless variety. So anybody that wanted to make sure that it had a decent amount of flavor could do a vegetable stock, half water, half vegetable stock.
Yeah, definitely. And then you're going to add stuff like bay leaves in here. You're going to add your cayenne pepper, your salt, your pepper. Try and keep that salt, like I said, towards the end. You got thyme, rosemary, all the traditional Cajun and Creole type seasonings. It's flavored to your taste. I'm not eating it, you're eating it, so make sure you like it. That's what we like to say.
That's it. I see that on the screen, but I can't quite. Let me put my glasses on. Hold on. I'm going to read it. I know everybody can see it, but I'm reading it anyway. It says, New Orleans' favorite son, jazz trumpeter Louis Satchmo Armstrong, is said to have signed his letters Red Beans and Rice. Fully yours?
Yeah, red beans and rice, fully yours.
All right. I need to get my glasses
He had
checked.
a little eating problem, Satchmo.
I don't think he had a problem.
They had an article. Oh, yeah, you're right. He loved his food so much he sang about it.
Yeah, he did. Yep, old Armstrong Park right down the street. I know I've posted a couple of pictures of the entryway to Armstrong Park. I will endeavor to write up a little story about that. Speaking of which, Wayne, what's been going on the internet with looking for good cooking? Anything developing that we need to tell people about?
Well, we have our website that's finally up and activated. And
Say that again a
if
little
you go to
louder.
the website. We have our website that's up and it's activated at www.lookingforgoodcooking.com, and we dropped the G's on purpose. But you type it in correctly, it should still bring you to the same site. And what we're trying to do is create basically a community online to where people come to our state or they're from our state and they really love Louisiana like we do. We want them to submit their recipes. We want them to submit pictures, tell us their stories. That's what it's all about. We want to know what's Louisiana make you smile for, right? It makes us smile all the time. And we really didn't know how much we loved Louisiana until we moved a state away. I'm not going to say which state that was, Texas. But we had difficulty getting a lot of our ingredients. And that was really what we loved. I mean, it wasn't just the food, though. It's all the stories and the traditions and the times and everything that we have down here in this area. And, Steven Soblowski the other day actually wrote an article about us. Did you see that on the Bayou Buzz?
I did, yes. We'll put the link in after the show.
Because Steven owns the Bayou Buzz, which is based out of New Orleans. And we met through the Google Plus platform, and he really thinks I'm kind of kooky and crazy with all the things that I do. And I'm like, Steven, I'm just Wayne, man. We have to go fishing. We got chickens. What else can I tell you? We're just living it up, living the dreams, like I like to say.
So then there's the website, everybody. Again, we'll put the link for the website. We'll put the link for the article on off of Bayou Buzz. And I thought of something very relevant to talk about just before, and it has eluded me completely. So hopefully we'll come back before the show is out. We're at just about 8 minutes before the top of the hour, Wayne.
Okay. Well, like I said, this is, once I get it to a rolling boil, we can have it simmer. It's already wanting to simmer and not boil. But what I'll probably do is throw it back on the big stove once we finish the live shoot. But I know Aslan Bloor was in the crowd. I think she was a little disappointed with the soccer match.
A little delay, but she's here now. So Aslan, thanks for tuning in, along with, of course, everybody else, late or otherwise. And don't forget that if you have somebody that you want to link this to for the YouTube video, we'd really appreciate it. You come across it. I find it all the time, especially on Google Plus or I guess any social media platform. Say Wayne and I will be having a conversation, and then 2 hours later, just by chance, somebody either sends me a link to something that we were talking about, even though they didn't know about it, or somebody will post something that's relevant to what we were talking about. So that's definitely one of the things I like about social media is the sort of serendipity of coming across tidbits about people's adventures and what we were talking about. So keep them coming, please.
Definitely. This week I've seen a dramatic increase in people posting, and I don't know what I'm doing any different besides just telling the stories and sharing the things that I love. Like I said, we went to visit with you down in New Orleans, and we had a great conversation. We got a lot of work done. We have our clarified mission statement, which we'll be putting up on the website soon too. And do you have that in front of you? Because I don't remember it by heart yet, but I can tell you what the premise is.
I could get to it. I don't have it written down, so to get to it means I'm going to have to look away from the camera and be distracted during the show. So I don't. But that's okay, because we'll put it up. I don't know where we're going to put it, in the link, in the comments, put it on the website.
We're going to put it all over. We're going to put it profile page, website, because again, the premise is not just to be tied with cooking. We love cooking because that's what we do, but we also want to go out and see, what are other people doing in our state? What's the culture aspect? And culture can be anything from architecture to music to food to churches. Just tell us, what are you doing that's positive, right? What's that family environment that we all love? We just want to help to spread that message and, to learn more, because yes, I'm from Louisiana, but I don't know everything. It's difficult to know everything, right? Because I have to forget something I've already learned. But, just being able to meet people, man, it's really enlightened me, especially with this platform. I'm getting so many people starting to reach out and contact me. One of the things, like we had a conversation the other day, was, well, I've never heard of Nix as a Cajun last name. I said, well, now you have. But typically, no, I'm not a traditional Cajun, but I am a Louisiana native. I was born and raised here, and I was born around this beautiful people, Creole, Haitian, Samoan, Vietnamese. I grew up in Patterson, P-Town is like what they like to call it. That's a home for Dalton Hilliard. Say who dat, right? A little Saints reference. But anyway, the point about that being is it's an oil field town, and you had all these different and diverse cultures. And I think that's what really sold me when I was able to move to New Orleans a few different times, just because that's what I'm used to, Lance. I'm used to being around different people, different religions, different cultures. And no, they don't, they have the different cultures because that's what they believe in. But at the same time, they believe in unity and being able to be respectful to each other and have a good time. And that's what I like. And that's the type of stuff we're trying to share.
With that, I've said it on this show before, and I will say it again, that New Orleans and the surrounding area, particularly southeast Louisiana, was one of the most culturally integrated parts of the country and world prior to the Louisiana Purchase. People and they said you could hear languages from all over the world at any given, all you had to do was stand still, and that you could hear anywhere from 20 to 50 different languages being spoken, all within earshot. But that connectivity that people had pre-Louisiana Purchase of cultural acceptance and encouragement, as well as the meshing of cultures while still retaining the aspects of cultural identity, is one of the things that Louisiana is known for to this day. So I love talking.
I'm glad you brought up. There was one language that was very prominent during that time. Do you know what that language might be?
I know of a few of them, but I'll let you answer your own question so I don't mess it up.
We'll let Dawn answer that question in that language.
Let me unmute myself. Francais. And what is today? We talked about that before the show. It is Le 14 Juillet, the 14th of July, and it is Bastille Day. We just wanted to mention to all our friends around, all our French-speaking friends, it's Bastille Day. On this day of 1789, the French stormed the Bastille, which was a traditional place for holding prisoners who were against the French government. I think on the day they actually stormed the Bastille, there were only 7 prisoners, but anyway, the fact remains that they were trying to do good for their own country, and a year later, in 1790, they officially declared it a festival, a celebration of French unity. And so that's just a little shout out from the 14 Juillet to our friends here, our friends at Codeville, of course, here in Louisiana, but our friends around the world. Happy fête, joyeux festival.
We actually
visited a few of those chambers in France too when we went several years ago. And we're planning on going back probably the next year, but we'll just have to see what the budget holds. But do you have any other questions right now, my friend?
I am going to look through the comments real quick, and we got one from Nazim, says he would love to see a show on historical architectural landmarks. Makes sense, we got a lot of them. Jamie Bankston showed up. Thanks, Jamie. Nice to have you here. I'm not mistaken, she is in Mississippi, but like past Christiane. I'm sorry, Jamie, I can't remember exactly where, but down on the Gulf, not too far from New Orleans. And so Aslan asked about talking about St. Louis Cathedral. As you all know, I post predominantly photos from around New Orleans. I guess we'll mesh that into the architectural show. And Debbie Davis very generously posted the Stephen Sabaldowski link already. So thanks, Debbie.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Deb. Um, our show is only 30 minutes long. Of course, like I said, it's 30 minutes long because most of our cooking is mostly prep time, and then you have to let it sit on the stove for about anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. Thinking about doing something a little different next show, maybe either some potato encrusted catfish, or maybe even go outside and do some blackened catfish. But the reason I did this show on red beans and rice is because somebody specifically asked, and I hate to say it, I can't remember who it was, but they specifically asked me a question about red beans and rice. So that's what I'm looking for. If anybody wants to know information, or if there's some type of traditional food that you want to cook that's from Louisiana, let me know. Because if I don't know, I have tons of books and I have tons of friends that are in the cooking industry, even yourself, Lance, that we can find out the information. And right now we're championing some people to try and get on to the show, and we want to go out and start practicing with some mobile things. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but that's what we're about to do. We're about to start trying to see how we can get the mobile uplinks going. And my friend Nazim, he has Casa Quesa, which he's about to start promoting his show for Italy. And the reason I mention him is because it kind of sounds like he's doing pretty much in Italy what we want to do here. You know, it's the same premise. It's just to connect and to show culture, those sorts of things. So if anybody has any type of meal, or if there's anything in this area that they'd like to see, we have, Avery Island's not far down the road. We can go and take pictures of that. We already have. There's so many different things. The Evangeline Oaks. Try and keep it South Louisiana right now because, like I said, kind of limited on time. But we do plan on getting up there to Duck Commanders and all these other people, in due time.
Yep. And if you have any, one thing I'd like to put out to the audience, and maybe this would be a show we could do as we're cooking a traditional Southeast Louisiana dish, is myths, things that you all think that connect, let me think, that you associate with Louisiana that maybe you've never experienced before, but because it's become kind of an urban legend about New Orleans, about Louisiana, about the swamps, whatever it is, king cake, Mardi Gras, how people talk, whatever it is. If y'all have some questions about that, that would give us some good ideas for shows that we could go and do some research and talk about. So I'd like to add that in as well.
Thanks, I got an idea.
Food. What's that?
I got an idea because you gave it to me the other day. There's this video clip for this sheriff that's called Lou Garou. You showed it to me. We got to get in touch with these cats, man. We'll put the link in the thing. But do you want to talk a little bit about it?
I will make this very brief. So Lou Garou, it's actually, we would say, I don't know, is a P silent? I always said Loup Garou, but maybe it is Lou Garou. There's a character in an upcoming, I think, sci-fi channel or one of those sort of channels for this Cajun sheriff who becomes a Loup Garou, which is what you all would call like a werewolf or a swamp beast. Typically, it's a werewolf. Anyway, I happened onto it the other day. It was ridiculous and funny and bad props, and we laughed about that one a lot because I remember my nephew telling me, "I can't go into the swamp, Uncle. They got the Loup Garou in there." And so ever since then, and that's been about 20 years ago when he told me about old Loup Garou. So it's a tradition, it's a scary story tradition of Louisiana, particularly around the swamps, but they go all the way up north too, about the scary monster. And basically I think it was to keep kids from falling into the swamp or getting lost in the swamp. It kind of scared them back to stay, within a reasonable 10-mile distance of their house. And we will find out more about this movie / I don't know if it was a movie or a TV show. I think it's a movie, but it's Lou Garou. We'll fill you in on that on a future show.
All right. You have any other call-outs or anything you want to say before we leave?
At the moment, everyone's just kind of chilling, watching the show. I think they can tell we're about to wrap up, so I guess this seems like a good time. We're at 4 minutes after the hour, pretty much on time for the amount of what we were doing. Any last-minute Red Bean news for anybody before you shut that down?
For side dishes, you can use cornbread, which we'll serve it with cornbread. A lot of times you'll get a pork chop, which I was supposed to tell you that's what we did with the goat, but I'm not going to go back to that joke. Anyway, you can put a little side of pork chop on it. It's whatever you want. But
French bread here in Louisiana is typical.
One tip that I forgot to talk about. people that don't want to go through this whole process, and I know Eslin Bloor is going to kill me for this, but there's something right here that's called Blue Runner beans. This thing will save you, especially during a hurricane. You don't have all day to sit there and watch for that. And the same thing, you just doctor it up.
That's it.
Blue Runner's from New Orleans, and one of the best red bean dishes I ever had it was from Blue Runner can. And she told me that after the fact. I guess it's just like one of those little commercials, you know.
And
But that's all I have for now. We're going to open up the green room to somebody that wants to come in. We'll just go ahead and put it in the stream if you want, babe. And I'll leave you with the last thing, Lance.
I was going to say about Blue Runner red beans. Frank Brightson, who is a celebrated Louisiana chef, who owns Brightson's restaurant in the Riverbend, uptown area of New Orleans, promotes Blue Runner red beans specifically. And one of my best friends has known him for years and years. She said, listen up. She said, if Frank is going to put his name behind Blue Runner, trust me, they're delicious. I already knew it. But for canned food, Louisiana doesn't mess around when it comes to ready-made canned foods. I can tell you right now, it's a good product. So that's it. That's my little Blue Runner endorsement right there. That's all. Thanks everybody for watching the show today.
All right, we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks. Merci beaucoup.
Merci buckets.